They say cameras never lie, but what if what they caught wasn't human? In the next few minutes, you're going to see two terrifying moments that nobody could explain, and one of them might be watching you right now. I moved into my house in Mesa, Arizona in early 2021 after finally saving enough to leave my cramped apartment in Phoenix. The neighborhood felt safe, filled with quiet middle-aged couples, retirees walking their dogs, and families who left their garage doors open without worry. I'm not a paranoid person, but I've had packages stolen before and figured a motion sensor camera over my garage would be a cheap layer of security. I bought a basic model, nothing fancy, just night vision, motion detection, and cloud storage. The camera was angled to see the driveway and the narrow walkway that ran between the garage and the wooden gate leading to my backyard. I never expected it would end up recording something that still makes my skin crawl whenever I pass that walkway. The first incident happened on September 14th, around 2 in the morning. I was asleep when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. At the time, I thought it was probably a stray cat or a moth flying too close to the lens, so I glanced at the live feed out of mild annoyance. The driveway looked empty. The walkway was still. There was no sound, no movement, nothing that should have triggered the alert. I shrugged it off, locked my phone, and went back to sleep within seconds. When I woke up the next morning, I remembered the alert and figured I'd check the clip just to see what had caused it. The footage started normal, grainy black and white video of my quiet, empty driveway. 4 seconds in, something moved at the far left of the frame, at the very edge of the walkway. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, or maybe a loose plastic bag drifting by. But then the figure moved closer, slowly entering full view of the night vision. It took my brain several seconds to understand what I was seeing, because nothing about the movement looked human. A woman, or at least something shaped like a woman, was gliding along the walkway. Not walking, not shuffling. It was as if her feet weren't making contact with the ground at all. She slid forward like she was on invisible rails. My first thought was that she was sleepwalking. Maybe from a nearby house. Maybe disoriented. Maybe high. Maybe sick. But as she got closer, I could see she wasn't wearing normal clothes. She had on a hospital gown, thin, wrinkled, stained in a dark patch near the hem. Her hair hung over her face in tangled clumps, and her head drooped forward like her neck didn't have the strength to hold it up. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her arms hung rigid at her sides, barely swinging, like she didn't know how human arms were supposed to move. She arrived at the corner of my garage and stopped abruptly, as if someone had pressed pause. Then, with unnatural slowness, she rotated her head toward the camera. That image stayed burned into my mind. Her face wasn't hidden behind her hair. Night vision captured it clearly. She had no eyes. Not hollow sockets, just smooth indentations beneath the brow, like two patches of skin that never developed the shape of eyes in the first place. Her nose was flattened, almost melted looking. Her mouth was small and tight, pressed shut like it had been sewn closed decades ago, and the stitches had dissolved, but the shape never returned to normal. She stared straight at the camera for 8 full seconds. Not moving, not breathing visibly, not blinking, though that made sense because she didn't have eyes to blink. After the 8th second, she tilted her head upward slightly, as though listening for something. Then she slid back the way she came until she vanished into the dark edge of the frame. I replayed that clip at least 30 times. I zoomed in. I slowed it down. I tried to convince myself it was someone wearing a mask. Maybe some sick prank from teenagers. Maybe a homeless woman lost, or drugged, or mentally ill. I even searched online for missing patients from nearby hospitals, but the closest facility was nearly 12 miles away, and no one had reported someone wandering off. I considered calling the police, but decided against it. I didn't want to sound insane or like I was reporting a ghost. Still, the image haunted me so badly that I left the house earlier than usual and spent the whole day distracted at work. When night came, I tried not to watch the live feed compulsively, but I couldn't help myself. Midnight came, then 1, then 2, nothing. I finally fell asleep around 3. 2 nights later, another alert jolted me awake at 2:03 a.m., the same exact time. My heart pounded as I fumbled for my phone and opened the live camera feed. Nothing. Just my empty driveway. But the unease was worse than the first time, like I was already expecting what I'd see when I checked the recording in the morning. I didn't go back to sleep easily. I lay awake for nearly an hour listening for footsteps or rustling outside my window. Eventually, exhaustion won. At dawn, I opened the app with shaking fingers. The new clip was 46 seconds long. 46 seconds of something silently moving just out of the camera's field of view. Shadows shifting on the edge of the walkway that made the night vision glitch in and out. But the final 12 seconds were the worst. The figure didn't come from the walkway this time. Instead, she appeared from behind the backyard gate. The gate door didn't open. She simply stepped through it, as if the wooden boards weren't even there. She stood perfectly still before turning her missing eyes toward the lens again. Her head twitched once, almost like a dog perking up its ears. Then she glided across the driveway until she was inches from the camera. There was no face now. Just a blank, smooth surface where her features should be, like the camera was too close to interpret anything human. The clip ended when the night vision flickered and the entire feed turned black. When I checked the camera physically, it was still mounted perfectly. No sign anyone had touched it. For the rest of the day, I felt watched. Even in grocery store aisles, even in traffic, even in the bathroom with the door locked. But the worst part came from something I hadn't seen before. While reviewing the clip again in the evening on my laptop, I noticed a faint reflection in the top left corner of the camera lens, something the app's small preview hadn't shown clearly. A second figure, smaller, closer, too close. It was a face pressed directly against the camera housing, a distorted face, like it had been stretched thin over bone. A single tooth showed between cracked lips. It wasn't the woman. The shape was different. The proportions weren't right. I slammed the laptop shut and nearly threw up. That night, I slept with all the lights on. I kept my bedroom door locked. I considered calling a friend, but what would I even say? There's something eyeless on my driveway? A face appeared on my camera lens? I'd sound insane. That was the first time I realized I might not be dealing with a person, and definitely not alone. For the next 3 nights, nothing happened. No alerts, no strange shadows, no signs of movement at 2-3 a.m. or any other time. I tried to convince myself that the 2 recordings were a glitch or some bizarre coincidence. Maybe 2 different people, maybe some intoxicated transient wandering the neighborhood. But the reflection of that distorted face against the lens kept replaying in my mind like a looping nightmare I couldn't wake up from. On the 4th night, I took the camera down, not permanently, just to inspect it. I wanted to make sure the lens wasn't warped or cracked, anything that might explain the strange visual distortions, but everything looked normal. I cleaned the housing, wiped the lens, reconnected the wiring, and angled it more directly at the backyard gate. If she came back, I wanted to see her clearly. For the rest of the day, I felt a nervous electricity running beneath my skin, an anxious anticipation I couldn't shake. I checked the app every hour at work. I locked my doors twice before bed. I kept the blinds fully closed. Around 1:50 a.m., I jolted awake without knowing why. It felt like someone had whispered directly into my ear. My room was quiet, too quiet. Even the refrigerator hum from the kitchen felt muted. I reached for my phone and checked the camera feed. It was offline, completely black. No connection, no data, nothing. My stomach twisted. I sat up in bed, listening hard, holding my breath. That was when I heard the first sound. A single, light tap against the backyard gate. Tap, not forceful, not aggressive. More like testing. The second tap came 10 seconds later. Then a third, softer, almost polite, like whatever was out there was knocking with the back of its knuckles. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under the bed and crept to the living room window, lifting one corner of the blinds just enough to see the driveway. Darkness, but not empty. Something shifted near the gate. A pale shape, low to the ground, like someone crawling and trying to stand. I closed the blinds instantly and backed away, heart slamming in my chest. My phone buzzed suddenly, an alert that the camera had reconnected. I didn't want to look, but I opened it anyway. The feed came back slowly, pixel by pixel. At first, it was just my driveway. Then a shadow stretched across the concrete from the left side. Then another shadow, smaller, more hunched. The larger figure moved into full view. It was her again, the woman in the hospital gown. But something about her was different. Her movements were sharper now, less smooth. Her head jerked slightly as she turned, as though her neck joints were grinding. The smaller figure crawled behind her. The camera's night vision struggled to capture its shape. It looked like a person, but twisted, limbs too long and bent at wrong angles, like someone had broken their elbows and knees and then forced them to walk anyway. It stayed low to the ground, head snapping in tiny, rapid motions like an animal sniffing. The woman stood facing the camera again. Her head rose inch by inch until the blank patches where her eyes should have been were pointed directly at the lens. But this time, the smooth skin rippled slightly, like something beneath it was trying to open from the inside. I felt bile rise in my throat. The smaller figure crawled toward the camera, not toward the driveway, not toward the walkway, toward the camera itself. Its limbs moved sideways like a spider, too fast, too mechanical. Then it froze, head tilting sharply, as though alerted by a sound I couldn't hear. The woman's head twitched violently. Then the feed cut out completely. I backed away from my phone so quickly I dropped it. I didn't want to pick it up. I didn't want to see if the feed came back. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. For the next 2 hours, I sat on my couch gripping the bat, staring at the front door and waiting for something to scratch at it or knock or try the handle. Nothing happened. At sunrise, I gathered enough courage to go outside. The driveway looked normal. The gate was closed, but the camera, my camera, was upside down. Still attached to the wall, but rotated 180 degrees, like someone had twisted it with inhuman strength. And on the lens, smeared in a faint half circle, was a residue that looked almost like the oily imprint of a mouth. I shut the garage door, locked everything, and called the police. They came out within the hour and searched the backyard, the gate, the walkway, everything. No footprints, no scratches, no signs of forced entry. And when I showed them the video clips, the officers glanced at each other in a way that made me feel ridiculous. They told me the footage looked tampered with, that it could be a glitch, a digital artifact, maybe even someone hacking into my camera feed. I could tell they didn't believe a word of it. One officer even suggested I get some sleep and avoid horror movies for a while. I almost laughed, if only it had been a movie. That night, I removed the camera entirely. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing whatever those things were on my screen again. But something else began happening, something even worse. I started hearing whispers inside the house, at first faint, like the wind blowing through cracks in the wall, then clearer. Soft, almost curious whispers, coming from the vents, from the attic, from behind the bathroom mirror. I called the HVAC company. They found nothing. I called a pest control service. No animals. No bugs. Nothing. And the whispers grew louder, usually after 2 a.m., usually near the back of the house. One night, as I walked past the kitchen, I saw the reflection in the microwave door. Not my reflection, hers, standing behind me, not moving, not blinking, not even fully shaped her outline, flickered like she wasn't fully present. I spun around with a shout, but the kitchen was empty. The next morning, I put the house up for sale. I priced it $30,000 lower than market value. I didn't care. I wanted out, but I didn't leave immediately. I stayed with a friend for 4 days, returning only once to gather more belongings. On that visit, I found something waiting for me. My camera, the one I had removed. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, perfectly centered, angled upward like someone had carefully placed it there to watch the ceiling. My friends swore they never entered the house. I believed them. That night, before I left for good, I checked the camera one last time, thinking maybe I should sell it, or at least wipe it. But when I connected it to power, all the stored clips were gone. All except one. A new clip, 23 seconds long. I hesitated but pressed play. It showed my bedroom, not my driveway, not my walkway. My bedroom, recorded from inside the house. The timestamp was from 2 nights earlier, one of the nights I'd been staying at my friend's place. At first, nothing happened. The room was still dim, silent. Then the closet door opened slowly. Not fully, just a crack, enough for a pale hand to slip through. Not her hand, the smaller figure. Its fingers were long, too thin, the joints bulging like swollen knuckles. The hand tapped lightly on the inside of the door. Tap, tap, tap. Then the woman's voice, the eyeless woman, whispered something so faint I almost missed it. But when I turned the volume to maximum, I heard it. We were inside before the cameras. I dropped the device, grabbed my things, and ran out of the house. I moved out of state within a week. I never retrieved anything I left behind. The new owners never contacted me. I never checked the listings to see if they sold it again. I don't want to know. But sometimes, when I wake up around 2, 3 a.m. for no reason, I swear I hear that same soft tapping against my closet door. Tap, tap, tap. Like something patient, and something that knows I don't have any cameras watching anymore. I moved into the Maple Ridge Apartments in northern New Jersey in the fall of 2019. The building was old but clean, with gray carpets, dim yellow hall lights, and an ever-present smell of dust that you eventually stopped noticing. I lived on the second floor, in Unit 2B, directly above the stairwell landing that led down to the lobby. I didn't know it when I signed the lease, but that stairwell would become the thing that ruined my sleep, my sanity, and eventually my ability to ever feel safe in a building again. Everything started when the building manager, Mr. Koenig, knocked on my door one morning with an annoyed expression and a laptop tucked under his arm. He was a heavy-set guy in his 50s, always sweating, even in the winter, always complaining about something breaking down. He didn't even say hello before launching into his issue. "You been walking around at night, Ethan?" I blinked. "Not really. Why?" He flipped the laptop around, showing me a paused CCTV frame from the lobby camera. The timestamp read 1:12 a.m. The camera was angled slightly upward, capturing the bottom half of the stairwell and the closed front door of the building. I expected to see something obvious, maybe someone who looked like me walking around. But instead, the frame was empty. No, I said. "I don't go out that late." Koenig scrubbed forward a few seconds. Look again." At first I thought I still saw nothing. Just the dim stairwell, the railing, and the old carpet. But then I noticed something in the shadow, beneath the bottom stair. A shape, a person. Someone crouched tightly with their knees tucked into their chest and their head down, hidden in the darkest pocket under the staircase. "That's not me," I said immediately. "I've never... What is that?" "That's what I'm asking you," Koenig grumbled, wiping his forehead with a napkin he pulled from his pocket. "Seen this guy 3 nights in a row, always between 1 and 2. Sits under the stairs like a damn goblin. Doesn't move, doesn't say anything." My stomach sank. "Did anyone see him come in?" "No footage of that," he said. "Door never opens. He just appears." I kept staring at the figure under the stairs. The camera quality was low, grainy, washed out, but I could still tell the proportions were off. One of his arms looked too long, reaching the floor even though the elbow was bent. His head wasn't facing down exactly, it was turned slightly toward the wall, like he was listening. "What did the police say?" I asked. "Haven't called them," Koenig said. "Could be a homeless guy, could be a junkie, could be some idiot kid. I just wanted to check if it was you or someone you know." "I don't know anyone like that," I said. He closed the laptop and exhaled loudly. "I'll monitor it. Probably goes away on its own." He left without saying goodbye. I tried to brush it off, but that image got stuck in my mind like a splinter. Whoever that was, they weren't just resting. They were hiding, watching, waiting. That night, I found myself pausing at the top of the stairs longer than usual before going down to get my mail. I looked over the railing, down toward the space beneath the bottom step. Empty, just a dark hollow. But the memory of that crouched body made my skin crawl. Around 1:30 a.m., when I was half asleep, I heard something. A soft noise coming from the hallway outside my apartment. A creaking, slow and almost rhythmic. Like someone shifting their weight back and forth on the old carpeted floor. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and listened harder. The sound stopped. I waited. Nothing. Eventually, I fell back asleep. The next morning, a slip of paper had been slid under my door. No handwriting, just a printed note. "Check your email." My hands shook a little as I opened my laptop. Sure enough, there was a message from Koenig sent at 2:41 a.m. Subject line, "He's back." The body of the email contained one attachment, a video. I clicked it. The timestamp read 1:58 a.m. This time the figure wasn't crouching under the stairs. He was kneeling, upright, his back perfectly straight, like a doll propped against a wall. His head was angled upward slightly, not toward the camera but toward the landing, as though he were staring through the floorboards, staring toward my apartment. My breath caught in my chest. The footage continued. He remained still for 15 full seconds, not moving a finger. Then his head snapped toward the camera so fast that the motion blurred. In the freeze frame, when his face came into clarity, I felt my scalp crawl. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He wasn't doing anything. His expression was completely still blank, empty, like he wasn't fully in control of whatever face he was wearing. But his eyes, they were open so wide, they looked painful, like he was forcing them as wide as human muscles allowed. There was something wet under his right eye, a tear trail, or maybe a smear of something darker. After the head snap, he didn't move again. The clip ended abruptly, almost too cleanly, like the system itself wanted to stop recording. I rewatched it 3 times before emailing Koenig back. He responded only with, "We'll deal with it in the morning," except he didn't deal with it, at least not in a way that made anything better. The following night, it worsened. At 1:13 a.m., I was lying awake in bed scrolling my phone when I heard something new. A whispering sound. Faint. Coming through the vent above my closet. A kind of hiss. Not words exactly, just a broken rhythm, like someone trying to speak from a dry throat. I muted my phone and listened harder. The whispering paused. Then came the creaking again, slow, deliberate weight on the hallway floor just outside my apartment. My heart hammered. I slipped out of bed, crept to the peephole, and looked through. The hallway was empty, but I heard something. No, felt something beneath the floorboards. Like movement under the stairwell. Like someone shifting below me, in the space where he had been crouching. I stayed awake the rest of the night with my lamp on, gripping a heavy metal flashlight like a weapon. Around 4:30 a.m., when exhaustion started winning, a soft thud echoed from downstairs. A single, deliberate thump, like a hand tapping the wall. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, while leaving for work, I passed Koenig in the lobby. He looked more anxious than before, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. "You checked the cameras?" I asked. "Yeah," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Guy wasn't there. Maybe he moved on. I didn't believe that. Something in his voice told me he didn't either. That night, everything escalated. I was in bed at 12:54 a.m. when an email notification popped up. Another message from Koenig. Subject: "You need to see this now." Against every instinct screaming at me not to open it, I did. Another video. I pressed play. The camera showed the stairwell again. Timestamp 12:43 a.m. The man was standing this time, fully upright, not hiding, not crouching. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, facing upward toward the second floor, toward me. His posture was wrong. Shoulders pulled back too far, chest jutting unnaturally forward as though strings were attached to him, pulling him from behind. His arms hung straight down, but one of them, the right one, seemed too long, the fingers nearly grazing the steps. His head tilted as he began climbing. One step, pause, another step, pause. Each step slow and deliberate, like he was savoring the movement or waiting for something. By the time he reached the top of the stairs, his face came closer into the camera's focus. And for the first time, I saw his mouth moving, not forming words, not speaking, just opening and closing slowly, like he was practicing how to mimic speech. My skin crawled. The man turned his head toward the camera one more time, and then, in a voice barely audible through the lobby mic, he whispered two words, "Found you." The clip ended. My chest tightened. My legs went numb. I stared at my apartment door, expecting to hear footsteps coming up the hallway, but there was nothing. Silence, heavy and suffocating. I didn't sleep that night, and it was only the beginning. I didn't go to work the next morning. I couldn't sit in a room full of people pretending everything was normal while knowing something had stood inside my house, something that had leaned over me while I slept. For a long time, I sat on the living room floor with every light on, gripping the baseball bat I kept in the hall closet for emergencies. I replayed the footage over and over, freezing the video at the exact frame where the face first appeared. No matter how long I stared at it, I couldn't convince myself it was human. Its proportions were wrong. The jaw too narrow, the cheekbones too sharp, the eye sockets too deep and too far apart. And its expression, it wasn't angry or smiling or even curious. It was the expression of something that didn't understand what a face was supposed to do, like a child mimicking human features without knowing how emotion worked. When the terror finally gave way to exhaustion, I started studying the earlier clips, again slowly, frame by frame. That's when I noticed something I had missed the first time. In the background of the footage from 2 nights before, Behind the first figure, the tall, gliding woman, something else was moving. At first, I thought the pixels were glitching, so I zoomed in. It wasn't a glitch. It was an arm, a thin, bony arm reaching out from behind the wooden gate. The fingers were impossibly long, too many joints, like a spider's legs, and the hand twitched in tiny, jerky motions as if testing the air. Then, as the woman glided past, the arm withdrew like it was afraid of being seen. My stomach dropped. There wasn't just one thing out there. There were at least two, maybe more. I shut the laptop and walked outside before I could overthink it. I forced myself to inspect the gate, the walkway, the gravel beside the garage. I needed proof this was all in my head, that what I'd seen was just camera distortion or a glitch or some kind of freak lens artifact. But the gravel told a different story. Someone or something had stepped there recently. The prints weren't shaped like feet. They were narrow, deep, and ended in sharp, pointed indents like claws. Too heavy to be an animal. Too unnatural to be human. I backed away instinctively until my shoulder hit the garage door. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with my laptop open, refreshing the live feed every minute, waiting for the motion alert I knew would come. Except it didn't. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock came and went. 2 o'clock, nothing. No alert, no movement, no glitching on the feed. Just stillness. But somehow, that made it worse. It felt like they were waiting for something, or planning something. At 3:12 a.m., the live feed suddenly cut to black. No alert, no error message, just darkness. And then, tapping. Not from the door, not the walls, from the back of the TV. 3 taps. Slow, deliberate, close. I held my breath and stayed absolutely still. Tap, tap, tap. A pause. Then a shrill, crackling sound came from the TV speakers, like the camera's audio had been hijacked. I reached for the remote with shaking hands, but before I could mute the sound, a voice whispered through the speakers, distorted and broken, like it was being forced through static. "We see you." I dropped the remote. The TV shut off by itself. I didn't move for nearly 10 minutes, waiting, listening. When the sun finally rose, I packed a duffel bag, grabbed my keys, and left the house without looking back. I drove 3 hours north to Flagstaff and checked into a cheap roadside motel. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I spent the entire afternoon researching how to disable my home camera remotely. I was done. Done with the footage. Done with the alerts. Done with whatever had crawled into my house. But when I logged into the app, the camera wasn't offline. It showed a live feed. Not of the driveway. Not of the walkway. The camera had been moved. It was inside my house, pointed directly at the motel room door I had just walked through. For several seconds, I couldn't think, couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. Slowly, the image zoomed in on the motel room peephole. Not automatically, not electronically, like someone was physically holding the camera and leaning closer to the door. And then a new alert appeared across the top of the screen. Motion detected. Inside, I heard footsteps outside my motel room. Slow, heavy, dragging across the thin carpet. I backed away from the door, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers went numb. The hallway went silent, then tap, tap, tap on my door, just like before. I didn't open it. I didn't make a sound. I didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Eventually, the footsteps moved away, fading toward the far end of the hallway. I stayed awake until dawn, clutching the bat I bought at a gas station near the motel. I checked out before the sun fully rose. I didn't even bother to take the duffel bag. I left everything inside that room. I drove to California, then Nevada, then Oregon, never staying in the same place more than a night. But every time I checked the app, the camera showed another door, another hallway, another motel, always the one I was staying in. It doesn't matter if I turn off location services. It doesn't matter if I get a new phone. It doesn't matter if I switch accounts. The camera still finds me. And every night at 2-3 a.m., the same alert pops up on my phone no matter where I am. Motion detected. Inside. Sometimes I hear the dragging footsteps. Sometimes I hear the tapping. Sometimes the voice crackles through whatever device I'm using. And sometimes the camera catches something standing on the other side of the door. Not the woman. Not the creature with the stretched face. Something taller, something thinner, something that bends its head down, as if listening for my breath through the wood. This is the last night I'll try to outrun them. I'm tired, too tired. I'm in another motel right now, in another state, sitting on another cheap bed with another set of lights turned on. It's 1:58 a.m. The alert will come soon. I don't know what they want. I don't know why they chose me, but I know the tapping won't stop until I open the door. And tonight, I think I finally will.